Hello, everyone. My name is Francis Nerica. I'm the National Director of Certification here at Acsm. I'm so delighted to have you join us today for a webinar titled 5 Qualities of High Performers in the Fitness Industry, presented by Dr. Rachel Reed of Orange Theory Fitness. Rachel has her PhD in exercise physiology and is an Acsm certified exercise physiologist. She has extensive experience in body composition, metabolism, physical activity measurement, and behavior change, along with over a decade of group coaching experience. Rachel is currently the Senior Director of Health and Fitness and Research at Orange Theory Fitness. Prior to joining Orange Theory, Rachel was the kinesiologist for Pure Barre. She lives in Watkinsville, Georgia, with her husband Sam and their 2 kids, AJ 4 and Madison 5 months, and their dog Roy. By the end of the session, you'll learn 5 strategies to perform higher in the fitness industry, where to find an Acsm continuing education, how CECs and continuing certification benefit career opportunities, and also be sure to write down your questions in the chat bar, and we'll be answering your questions at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, Rachel, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Francis, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you guys today. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for logging in. As Francis mentioned, I've really spent my budding career so far straddling the line between the academic world and the fitness industry. And so in my work as an industry science, I've gotten to help translate a lot of the amazing work that so many academic researchers are doing into applied science in the fitness industry. And that's currently what I do in my role at Orange Theory Fitness. So on the next slide, I want to talk to you a little bit about what Orange Theory is doing and who we are, because I think that will help frame up some of the perspective that I'll share throughout the next 45 minutes or so. So as Francis mentioned, right now I'm the Senior Director of Science and Research for Orange Theory Fitness. We've got about 1,500 studios in 24 countries, just shy of 900,000 members, and we deliver personalized heart rate-based interval training. And so what that means for all of you certified pros logging into the webinar is that we are offering variable intensity interval training on treadmills and rowers, as well as some multi-modality resistance training on the floor. So you see, for example, medicine balls in that image on the screen. We use dumbbells, TRX straps, etc., to just introduce a dose of resistance training to our members. And I'm proud of the brand for a lot of reasons, but I have to say, if we take a step back and think about what the secret sauce is of our brand and really of the fitness industry at large, it's the coach, it's the instructor. They are the heart of everything that we're doing. And so at Orange Theory, our philosophy is that all of our coaches should come into our studio teams with a certification. So we accept certifications from ACSM, NASM, AFA, ACE, or NSCA. They also all have CPR or AED certifications, and they go through internal brand-specific training. And so it's really important for us to have these NCCA accredited certifications as a bare minimum standard for our coaches. And what that does is ensures to the employer a consistent minimum level of competency from which we can then build skills on top of. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is what those skills are. And Francis mentioned our learning objectives, but we'll show them to you quickly here too. So on the next slide, we've got 5 qualities and how to develop them. We want you to learn how to set yourself apart from others with some actionable takeaways. We will also go through ACSM certification options so that you can see maybe from a different perspective why and how certification can help you turn a job into a career path. And then, of course, we will give a nod to the importance of continuing education and give you some examples of how you could find continuing education modules that help you develop or hone the 5 qualities that we'll touch upon. All right, so to kick things off, I actually want to share with you on the next slide a little bit of information about the role of certified professionals, how ACSM sees it and how we see it too at Orange Theory Fitness. Fitness professionals have an integral role to play in providing access to physical activity in the communities in which they live and work in, even now online, which I know so many of you are doing. Their job, or our job as certified professionals, is to translate all of this amazing work that's being conducted in the academic and sports medicine worlds into practice that actually helps people move more, that helps them change their behaviors, that gives them more access. And I think this quote from ACSM's new career guide sums up a lot of the why behind what we are all doing here. And that is, our mission is simple. We want to make movement accessible to everyone. And we do that by and large through certified fitness professionals. That means that we work hard to reduce these commonly reported barriers of physical activity so that we can promote movement as part of the healthcare continuum and therefore help people improve their lives, right? We're all so familiar with the myriad of physical and mental health benefits that regular exercise or physical activity can bring to the table. And so this focus on the certified professional and sort of taking them where they are, meeting them where they are, and taking them to the next level with these soft skill qualities that we'll review is really at the heart of what we will talk about today. Okay, so fitness professionals can and do work in a variety of settings, and I want to walk through some of them with you here live, just to make sure that we're framing up the importance of our work as a collective group and the scope of that work appropriately, because as you can see, just even glancing at all of the different places in which we can work and impact the communities, we've got a big seat at the table, and we should be really, really proud of that. If yours isn't represented here, let us know in the chat. We want to talk about that too. So starting at the top, of course, we've got health clubs and gyms. So think personal trainers, group exercise instructors, even management roles. We have university settings. We've got corporate wellness, public health settings. You know, as we all know, public health has been under the microscope recently. So maybe a silver lining is that many companies are recognizing the importance of having certified fitness professionals who often do improve the public health of their communities. We've also got hospital or clinical settings where certified professionals can really help with the treatment of different disease states as part of a cross-functional treatment team. We have rehabilitation settings, physician offices, and even corporate settings. And I think one note that I want to share with you is that even within an industry company, say we'll use Orange Theory, for example, we have a corporate team that employs certified professionals like myself and other members of our science and research and fitness teams. And then we also have those 1,500 studios scattered all around the globe who have certified professionals too. And so the takeaway is that we work and have an impact in lots of different places. But at the heart of each of the roles represented here are common skill sets that, when we harness them appropriately, allow us to be much more effective as a whole field and as a whole industry. So let's show you what those 5 qualities are. The first one is credibility. And when I think about credibility, I think about a combination of formal education, certification, and experience. I think about that as a trifecta, and we'll dive into that a little bit here soon. The second one is having this hungry yet humble mentality. So this balance between confidence and the ability to seek feedback. So to know what you know and be confident in that, constantly seek to expand that, but also be comfortable with the limits of that knowledge and when to refer out to a different type of professional. The third one is a zest for learning. So this desire to stay in the know with both trendy topics and foundational topics, knowing where to look for trustworthy evidence and really building up your own toolbox. Number 4 and 5, they're closely linked together in my perspective. So we've got communication, so a mastery of communicating effectively to a variety of people and roles, and then showing empathy when you communicate. So empathy by definition is just the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And so as we dive into each of these a little bit more in depth, I want to remind you that mastering these different skills or qualities is going to take effort. It's going to take time, and it's going to take feedback, because it's all linked to us as certified pros being willing to change our learning and change our behaviors in some way. And behavior change is hard, as we all know very well. But hard things are almost always worthwhile. So let's dive into skill number 1, your credibility trifecta and how you can establish that. Now, when I think about establishing credibility, I like to visualize it as a 3-legged stool. You've probably heard that analogy before, or a trifecta, if you will, where you have these 3 main components that work together to create a well-rounded professional. And so the idea then is that if you just have one of these elements, the stool is going to be a little bit wobbly until you can kind of build up the other components. So let's walk through this diagram. At the top, sort of 12 p.m. on your screen here, we've got formal education. So this might mean undergraduate or higher level education in a related field. This may or may not be necessary depending on what certification you seek to attain and what role and career path you wish to move forward with. So for example, if we think about the Orange Theory framework, some of our coaches have a bachelor's degree in another field that actually lends itself really well to having effective communication styles with that show empathy, etc. But sometimes for people like our regional head coaches who sit over a whole bunch of studios in a specific region, we might look for or recommend that they have formal education in the exercise science sort of pathway so that they can use that information to train the coaches that report up to them. So it's all going to depend on what career path you like as well. But formal education is an important piece of the puzzle for many different roles in the fitness industry. Next up, we've got practical experience. And this means like actual experience working with people in your craft. Now, a little bit about me. When I graduated from undergrad, although I had done a lot of clinical hours, hoping to go to physical therapy school, I really had very little experience actually working with people. I had earned my CPT certification my senior year of undergrad. I was all excited because I had done all of the pre-PT courses, all of the exercise science courses, all of the labs, and I had all this knowledge, all this theory. But aside from practicing that in labs, I really had no experience applying that with actual people who live and work in the real world, who have complicated lives, who aren't students. And so I cannot highlight enough the importance of having that practical experience. And sometimes as a new fitness professional, that can be hard to figure out how to get practical experience. How do you get that if you're on the job market right now? So we'll talk about that in a minute. But last and certainly not least, certification and CECs. So we talked a little bit about how and why these NCCA accredited certifications are really important in the fitness industry overall and to the Orange Theory brand. But I also want to make sure you realize that in order to maintain those certifications, you do have to keep up with some continuing education. And so what that means from an employer perspective is that there's this sort of built-in guarantee that the certified pros you're hiring are going to keep up with some learning just as a mechanism of having that certification. Now, of course, we hope that they're doing much more intentional learning than the bare minimum, but it is assuring us, at least at a minimum level, that they're keeping up with some learning there. And so I think, again, when we think about credibility, it's pieces of all of these. They might differ a little bit based on the job role that you're applying for or the career path that you've set yourself up for. But this credibility is really important for each individual to start establishing. And I want to walk you through practical experience a little bit more in depth and give you some ideas, because as a certified professional, and we can look at the next screen here, as a certified professional, identifying practical experience opportunities and the mentorship that accompanies them can be really difficult. And as you see the words up on the screen, you probably have thought of most of these before, but I hope to show you them from a slightly different angle so that the barrier to entry for some of them is lowered a little bit. So oftentimes when we think of shadowing, which is the first one up there, we might think of longer term shadowing opportunities or even internship opportunities. And while those are certainly impactful, by the way, we're starting that up at Orange Theory, which we're really excited about, they often might be unpaid or underpaid or just frankly not an option time commitment wise for where you are. You can, of course, look for paid options, but you can also consider short-term shadowing opportunities that might be super informative in different settings. So, for example, if you identify someone whom you wish to emulate from a career trajectory perspective, you might be able to shadow them for a couple of hours. You might be able to even just take an hour of their time and learn about what they do during their day. There are smaller versions of this that can still be really impactful in both growing your network and giving you a little bit of visibility into what their specific type of job role might bring to the table. Secondly, working with friends and family is so important. So if you are, for example, a certified personal trainer, you're newly certified and you are about to start a new job, you probably don't want to program for the very first time with a paying client, right? In fact, that might be might introduce some opportunities for a misstep. And so practicing that with different friends or family members whom you feel comfortable doing assessments with and designing personalized programming for is going to help you experience that practical application in real time with real actual people instead of examples from a textbook per se. And actually in the fitness industry, this is a best practice. This is something that Orange Theory has been doing since long before I joined the team a couple of years back. But as a new coach is sort of getting trained up at the studio, we actually have friends and family only classes where that person, before they're in front of paying clients or members, they are delivering the product several times over to friends and family in a safe environment where they can learn, they can feel free to try out different skills that they're honing, etc. So it's a safe learning environment that's really going to be impactful towards building their credibility and building their self-efficacy to deliver a great product. And last but certainly not least, this is something that I still make it a point to do, learning from other fitness professionals. I love to take classes or book personal training sessions with other fitness professionals, even having been a certified pro, working in a lot of different settings in both academic and industry. It's still so helpful to remember that you can learn from other people. It's a great best practice to put yourself back into the client shoes too, and to see what you can learn from that certified pro who's working with you. All right, so speaking of building your network, which we'll go into on the next slide a little bit, I think when it comes to credibility, we want to make sure that you're also surrounding yourself with like-minded people, with like-minded professionals, and helping to build your own network. And that can feel a little bit overwhelming, so I want to provide you some very practical tips that you can begin applying today that have helped me for certain to connect with different professionals. So first of all, LinkedIn, that can be a really helpful place to make sure you are present, keeping your profile up to date, connecting with others, and even watching job titles and descriptions from different industry companies that you may seek to work for or work with. One of my best practices that I love to share with people if they reach out and ask about maybe my career path is, for example, looking at other people within my network, figuring out what it is they do, and figuring out what those different job search terms might be, the keywords on their resumes and CVs, etc. So LinkedIn can be a really powerful resource. Don't forget about ACSM's resources too. ACSM has a career services page, which I believe was recently revamped, and it's super helpful. They also have a mentorship and leadership program, which you can enroll into if you're looking for a more formalized way to develop your network. University resources. If you are affiliated with or have recently graduated from a university, please utilize their Career Center. In fact, I still utilize the Career Center from my undergrad institution to help with things like resume polishing or connection if I am just sort of seeing what other options are out there. And then last but not least, learning the lingo. I can say very confidently, as someone who went all the way through the academic track from undergrad to master's, PhD, postdoc, I learned a lot about theory, I learned a lot about science, and I'm so grateful for the training that I've received. I can also confidently say that when I first entered the fitness industry, I had a lot of catch up to do as far as learning business language, learning about things like, what does EBITDA mean? How can I make sure that I'm paying attention to the bottom line? What factors impact that, right? So seeking out business knowledge is also a really important thing depending on what sort of sector you might wish to work in, and LinkedIn has resources for that too. Okay, so that was all skill set or quality number one, building out that credibility trifecta. Let's move into number two. So the second quality of high performers in the fitness industry that we'll cover today is what I'm referring to as having a hungry but humble approach. I think this little brain doing a workout here is really eye-catching, and it reminds me of people in the gym who are only training arms and are skipping leg day. So okay, so hungry yet humble mentality. Now I've got three things identified here, and I want to walk you through each of them. But first, I want you to recall your most influential teacher or coach, because chances are their passion and their hunger to improve your life is something that you still remember. Maybe it was a coach when you were really little, playing soccer, baseball, t-ball, etc. Or maybe it's been a fitness professional whose class you just love to take because you feel good when you're in the class and you feel even better when you're leaving. I think fitness professionals who have this same genuine it factor can make a big splash. And at the unit level, at the studio level, they might, for example, be the coach that's most approachable to members, to clients. And so finding your it factor, I think, can take time. Everybody does have that inside them. It's a skill that you can develop and hone, and it's going to take some self-reflection. It's going to take some practice and a combination of having some confidence, which again, you're going to develop through that credibility trifecta, passion, and also some humility, right? I think members and clients who are literally paying certified fitness professionals to help improve their fitness, help improve their quality of life, they have an expectation that there's this element of humility there, that they can relate to the certified professional who's helping guide them in a way. And so one big way to help kind of figure out what your it factor is being comfortable to ask for feedback. Asking for feedback is a skill, and implementing helpful feedback is also a separate skill. And both of those skills can take a little bit of time to become really adept at. So we'll go through an example here in just a minute. And last but certainly not least, related to hungry yet humble, is referring out to other professionals. We've got to be comfortable with the limits of what our core competencies are and understand where they begin and also where they end. Because in my perspective, only then will people begin to take certified professionals even more seriously, and only then will we be able to make it an even bigger impact on public health and the people that we serve. Okay, so let's go into the skill of asking for feedback on the next slide, and we're going to use a group exercise instructor example. Even if you're not a group exercise instructor, chances are you've taken a group exercise class at some point in your history. Now, think about a group exercise instructor and all of the different things that they're managing when they are delivering a product, right? Think about an Orange Theory coach, for example. They are going to deliver a pre-programmed workout to sometimes 40 people of varying ages, ability levels, preferences, etc. at one time in 60 minutes. That's linked to the music, right? There's a lot to think about. So you've got the group exercise instructor in the middle of this diagram, and just going clockwise around this circle, got vocals, power, pacing, tone. Are they providing progressions and regressions well? Are they able to interact with clients or members pre and post class effectively, communicating well, using empathy? Do they have good demo form? Are they able to demo progressions and regressions and teach to the middle level? Is their cueing clear? Are they programming in a way that's appropriate for all the people who have showed up that day, right? There are so many things that they could ask for feedback for. And so if you were to just approach someone and say, like, can you give me feedback on my class today? It would be almost impossible for them to give comprehensive feedback on all of these elements at one time. And so a best practice when you're asking for feedback, whether that's from a peer or whether that's from a boss or mentor, is to ask for targeted feedback in areas that you know you might need some further development in, right? We all have that self-awareness to know what our skills are, and we want to maximize those. And then we also want to make sure we're doing a good job of building up those areas of opportunity. So here's an example of how you might ask for specific feedback for providing progressions and regression. So for example, hey, can you take my class next Friday? I have a postpartum client and a few older adults signed up. I want to make sure I'm giving them options well over the mic when appropriate and off mic or individually when appropriate that are safe and effective. I'd love for you to keep an eye out for that, watch how I'm doing, and then maybe we can meet for coffee afterwards, right? So asking for feedback that's really specific and then making a plan to hear that feedback and hopefully take what works and apply that to your next class is going to be something that's going to take practice and time. Many group fitness companies have feedback mechanisms like this built in at systematic times, but don't forget that you can ask for feedback at any point too from a peer or maybe another person that's hopping in to take your class too. All right, let's talk about referring out to other professionals just a little bit more. I think sometimes fitness professionals, and gosh, really anyone who is on the allied healthcare continuum might have a little bit of hesitancy with saying to a client or a member, I'm not sure, that's not within my skill set. What I can do is refer you out. But I would beg for all of us to think about that a little bit differently. I actually think there's a lot of power in magnifying the specific contributions we are trained and uniquely certified, trained to offer, and also recognizing when another professional can be able to take over. And so each ACSM certification has associated competencies that are actually derived from something called a job task analysis. And what that means is ACSM does a lot of work behind the scenes, as do ACE, NSCA, NASM, etc. They do a lot of work behind the scenes to figure out what people with these certifications are actually doing in their day-to-day job responsibilities. And the certification and the exam are built to satisfy that level of competency. Okay, so we actually have a pretty good understanding of what certified pros with these certifications are really doing. And we want to make sure that we are recognizing this unique and highly valuable skill set, where we can best fit into this healthcare continuum, and then where our expertise ends, and building a network of other professionals who can help complement that so that we can better serve our members. I know, being a group fitness instructor and personal trainer for quite a long time, that, and you probably all recognize this too, that sometimes clients or members will see you as the expert in everything. They trust you. You have that special bond, that two-way communication where they feel really safe to confide in you about various things going on. And so having the confidence in what your limits are and when to refer out is something that's going to take practice. And we encourage you to continue doing that with your teams. Okay, number 3. So quality 3 out of 5 is a personal favorite of mine. I would consider myself a very enthusiastic, lifelong learner. And I think this is something that we hope that certified Orange Theory coaches are also really passionate about, this zest for learning. And when it comes to having a commitment for learning, it kind of encompasses a few different things. One of them being an understanding of where and how to look for resources that can help build you up, that are trustworthy in nature. So I want to walk through a couple of ideas for you here, just so that maybe one will pique your interest and you can add it to your repertoire. So starting clockwise at the top, we've got evidence-based online resources. So think about consensus documents, position stands that summarize the consensus on a specific topic. ACSM certainly has many of those. Also think about other evidence-based resources like ACSM blogs or blog posts from the American Council on Exercise written by certified professionals who are combining scientific research with experience, right? That's what evidence-based means, right? So that experience plus nodding to the evidence. Make sure you save those different links on your browser. Maybe you subscribe to the newsletter so that you can see what's being published regularly. The second one is social media. I know most of us are on social media in some capacity. You may as well set yourself up for success with that passive learning as you scroll and scroll. If you're anything like me, you're doing that at night when you should be maybe sleeping instead. But set yourself up for success and follow evidence-based accounts. So find ACSM, find the American Heart Association, American Council on Exercise, NSCA, add those to your regular scroll so that you might see topics of interest as they become available, even when you're passively scrolling. Of course, you've also got continuing education that can be required to maintain your certification. That's really important. You can also think about using that continuing education to upskill in areas that are needed for you. You might also consider attending meetings or conferences, right? So whether it's virtual or in person, these events offer so many different learning opportunities from different types of professionals. They also offer a lot of networking opportunities. Even virtual events now have great networking opportunities. What about on-the-job training too? So brand or product-specific training to help you grow your skill set in your current role. And then, of course, specialist programs and certificates. So we've got these primary core certifications, which we will talk about as we wrap here in about 15 minutes. But we also have these other opportunities offered by NCCA accredited organizations that can help you dive into a niche area. So for example, there's an autism exercise specialist program that's really awesome that ACSM offers now. So if you are wanting to expand your knowledge that way, you can use earning a specialist program in order to kind of help fill in any gaps that you need to further your own practice as a certified fitness professional. So you might be thinking, well, Rachel, that's all well and good, but I'm busy. I've got a lot going on. I coach, teach, I have a full-time job, family, other responsibilities. How do I strategize like fitting this into my lifestyle such that I'm not like waiting until the end of my 3-year recertification cycle to kind of fit these all in? How can I strategize a little bit better? So I want to share with you something that's worked for me over time. And I think the first one is to be practical about it. You've got to identify how many credits you need to learn from a CEC perspective, and also like what you want to learn to further your knowledge base. You want to plan smarter. So once you've identified like, okay, what do I need? How can I plan effectively so that I can balance the number of CEC hours I need with career or expertise growth? So we've all heard of smarter goals for health behavior change. That can certainly apply when you're strategizing how to become an intentional learner as well. And then of course, tracking your progress over time will be helpful. One of the things that I do as a best practice is actually block 30 to 40 minutes every Friday morning for myself and for my team at work, where we devote to professional development or upskilling of some sort. So maybe that's time to read something on a blog post or read a scientific consensus article. Maybe it's actually creating or continuing a module in LinkedIn Learning that I've identified will help improve my knowledge of business, for example. So setting aside a really manageable amount of time every week can help you make really great progress there. What about habit stacking too, right? Don't forget that all these strategies we teach to our clients and members can apply to ourselves and our lives as well. So maybe if you're going for a walk during the day, you can listen to a podcast, an evidence-based podcast, or a webinar, even one like this, while you're doing that, right? So making the learning more accessible and making it fit your schedule and also your needs to upskill yourself, maybe with some of the qualities like we've talked about today, and or to improve your growth trajectory at work. Okay, communication is the fourth skill that we'll cover today. And by the way, we will have an entire upcoming webinar dedicated to improving your communication skills as a certified fitness professional. I believe that's coming up in just a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that, because we could spend a whole hour talking about communication. And I want to take a step back and just frame communication for you as a skill. Communication can be a skill, right? I think sometimes we approach communication thinking some people are great communicators and some are not. And I would argue that actually anyone can, with practice and feedback, become a really great communicator. And so here are 4 different qualities of being an effective communicator as a certified fitness professional. And by the way, you don't have to enter the job being an expert at all of these, but it is in your best interest to go from competent to great and successful to start developing these different communication skills. So number 1, having clear, knowledgeable verbal instructions. So this might mean to you preparing to deliver your product ahead of time. This will allow you to be clear and concise while also helpful as you communicate to the people who showed up that day for you. So when I think about this one in a group exercise setting, which again is where a lot of my experience as a certified pro lies, I think about the difference between when I was first coaching a new format. And all I could do was like remember the words I needed to say, but I wasn't actually showing up for the people in front of me. I'm sure if you've been in these shoes, in similar shoes, you can relate to this, right? It took me time to feel like I was prepared enough to actually show up and coach the people in front of me rather than just like saying what I thought I should say. Number 2, verbal and nonverbal communication. Gosh, in a fitness setting and really in any setting, of course, you've got your verbal instructions, which do need to be clear and concise and helpful to the people in front of you, but you've also got your nonverbal communication. And in an exercise setting, when the member is maybe looking at you just for a split second to get certain feedback and apply it to their own movement, you've got to be spot on and aware of the importance of this nonverbal communication. So body language, gestures, your exercise demonstration form when you're setting them up, that all contributes to the way that we communicate and to the way that a member is receiving that communication. And then don't forget to show professionalism as a best practice when you are providing written communication over email, text message, etc. Number 3, use principles of reflective listening. So of course, when we're working with clients and members, we want to approach them asking open-ended questions, listening to understand, etc., rather than approaching them as the all-knowing expert and teaching and teaching and teaching. We always have to make sure we check for understanding and make sure that we're aware of where that person lies and how we can help improve any of their understanding as they move forward. Number 4 is the ability to flex to different styles and environments too. So the way you deliver a group exercise class should differ from how you explain fitness assessment results to a client, for example. So when we're on the mic and we're delivering a product, our approach should be different than when we're one-on-one with somebody, right? And so that might depend a little bit on where you practice and where you work. But that ability to flex to different styles and to have that two-way communication feedback loop is going to be really important. And again, don't forget that we've got that upcoming communications webinar, which will be really helpful and will build on the content that you see here. Now, number 5 is actually really closely linked to me with communication, and that's being able to communicate with empathy or learning how to show empathy. And empathy can be defined as the ability to understand and show the feelings of another. And boy, that can be very hard to do, especially in the fitness setting, which is a really fast-paced world for most of us. Whether you work in a gym or health club or you work in a clinical setting, they're fast-paced. You're seeing a lot of people every single day. And so remembering to slow down and remembering that fitness is personal is going to help you a ton to hone your craft over time. Now, this fitness is personal piece is really important for us to remember, because many times as fitness professionals, maybe we've had our own history with exercise or physical activity over time. And a lot of us physical activity is part of our lifestyle. It's part of who we are. It's part of our identity, our purpose. I know that's the case for me. But a lot of times the people who are coming to us seeking change, they aren't, in the same mindset that we might be about fitness. It's personal. That means it's emotional. And as we say at Orange Theory, it's challenging yet doable to start an exercise program, to maintain the exercise behaviors over time. And so recognizing that you've got a real person in front of you with their own unique set of challenges and being able to communicate with them empathetically is something that's going to make you unlock that it factor that we spoke about before. Now, empathy, obviously it's a concept that's been around for a while, and I do like the way that Dr. Brené Brown talks about it. So she's certainly not the inventor of talking about empathy in this way, but she does speak about it in a way that I think is really easy to apply to what we all do as certified fitness professionals. And what she says is that empathy fuels connection, while sympathy can drive disconnection. And she gives us 4 steps to being able to show empathy. The first one is perspective taking. So how can we put ourselves in that person's shoes? When I think about perspective taking, the thing that comes to mind for me is when someone approaches me and says, gosh, I had this event happen in my family life or my personal life, blah, 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 and they seem very distressed. Sometimes my first reaction is to say, gosh, I can't relate. Or I think maybe, oh, I can't relate. Gosh, that would be so hard to handle. But really, I can imagine, I can relate, I can try to take that perspective and step into it with the person. And that's oftentimes what the person needs, right? Number 2 is staying out of judgment. Judgment is something we all do within a split second of approaching a person, a situation. And sometimes it can be really fun to make judgments about different things, right? Like we all do it. We come into situations with our biases. But as much as we can, especially when we've got our professional hat on, stay out of judgment in a conversation with someone. It's going to be more fruitful in the end. Can we recognize the emotions that that person is showing or trying to show, or even sometimes trying to hide? And then can we communicate effectively? And I think for me, when we think about empathy, we want to think about the fact that empathy is feeling with people. We want to feel what they're feeling, because only then will the person be open to us helping them change their behaviors. this connection, this empathy is what grows communities. And in the group fitness space, that's where much of our success is based, right? We want to impact the individual at the community level by using social support, accountability, and other evidence-based approaches to change behavior and impact health. And without empathy, a lot of that is just not possible because people won't feel seen, they won't feel valued, and they'll stop showing up. So this empathy angle is really important. And I want to go through sort of a silly example just so that you'll remember how important communicating with empathy is on this next slide. So communicating with empathy is a skill that we can train, and we need to use deliberate practice to become good at it. This is closely linked to motivational interviewing techniques, using reflective listening, etc. So again, stay tuned for that communication workshop where we will dive into that a little bit more. So here's a situation, maybe you are a personal trainer and someone shows up to work with you for a session, and you're waiting for them to show up, you're waiting, they're 10 minutes late, they're 15 minutes late, they finally show up 20 minutes late. And instead of saying like, gosh, what's going on? I don't know why you're having so much trouble showing up. Maybe you could try approaching it in a different way. Like, it sounds like you're really having a hard time. It sounds like you're frustrated or you're in a hard place right now. Tell me more about it, right? That's an open invitation for the person to tell you how they're feeling, what emotions they have, so that you can lose the judgment and meet them where they are. This can lead to connection, it can lead to open conversation, and then problem solving, right? Because you are a team, and in order for them to change their behavior, a lot of times they need to feel that connection. They want that confidence that you understand their why, their mission for why they're there. And I'll wrap up this section by saying Francis, whom you met briefly at the beginning, he was quoted to say, "You can't develop a community without empathy." And so again, this empathy piece is important, and it should be pervasive as you work with clients every day in your job. All right, so before we wrap today, I want to share with you some information and some resources that are available to you from ACSM. First of all, I want to share with you that the ACSM team has recently released a new career guide. You see a screenshot of it here. You can navigate to it pretty easily on the main website. And it's a quick summary of information like what are the certifications that are offered, what are the core competencies with each of those certifications. So if you remember, we talked about staying sort of within your core competency set as a part of the credibility trifecta. It's also got ACSM membership information, so it walks you through how to register and all of those related perks. And it even has some information from that job task analysis that we were referring to earlier. So data-driven information on compensation for roles that you might have with these different certified certifications. So again, when we're thinking about all of the skills that we just went through, those 5 qualities that make someone go from being minimally competent to really successful in a fitness industry setting, we want to think about the importance of the NCCA accredited certification as the base level there. This again is giving reasonable assurances to us at Orange Theory and many other employers that the people who we're employing have a minimum threshold of being safe and effective. And then we want to train for these additional skills on top of that. So these ACSM certifications that provide that foundation, there are 4 key ones that we'll talk about just quickly for you so that you have this comprehensive view on the next slide. And the first one is the ACSM Group Exercise Instructor. So this one is specifically geared toward people who are interested in leading and instructing generally healthy clients in group settings. Okay, so again, that's group exercise. Orange Theory falls into that category. We've also got this certified personal trainer, which is, really more geared toward people who want individualized programming, working with one-on-one, generally healthy clients. Then we've got 2 certifications that really distinguish ACSM amongst our peers because they are requiring a basic education, a formal education, a bachelor's degree or higher in order to practice these or be eligible to sit for the exams. So we've got the ACSM Exercise Physiologist, which is the credential that I have, and that requires the bachelor's degree and then you can go through the curriculum and sit for the exam. And what this allows you to do is interpret physical fitness assessments and create exercise prescriptions for people who are healthy or who have medically controlled conditions. Okay, and then to take it a step further, the clinical exercise physiologist does require that bachelor's degree, as well as a significant amount of clinical or practical experience that prepares you to work with disease populations. Okay, so you can think about all of these different certifications being applicable to the various avenues in which people can work that we went over earlier. And this is not to say that one is more important than the other, but what we do want you to take home is that each of these categories of certified professionals have such an important seat at the table, especially as public health and health promotion is it's highly visible right now with everything that's going on in the world. We want to make sure that these certified professionals are recognized for the unique contributions they can each make to their communities and to the lives of so many people within these communities. All right, so let's wrap up with some key takeaways, and we will have a little bit of time for questions. So certified professionals really are the heartbeat of the fitness industry. I want to assure you that you do have a really important role to play. Your skill set is highly valued, and you can develop additional qualities and skills that set you apart to your leadership, to hiring managers, and to your clients alike. You can start taking small actions today based on some of the content that we've reviewed together, like updating your LinkedIn profile, registering for a CEC webinar that builds the qualities we've discussed, asking for feedback from a peer or mentor, and also just recognizing your impact. I think a lot of times, especially if you are living in the grind of being a certified fitness professional in the industry and you're teaching early morning classes, that's what my preference always has been, or teaching weekend classes and going to and from at all hours, don't forget about the impact that you're making. I mean, it goes back to the mission statement of ACSM to make movement more accessible to more people. Remember what your own personal mission is too. I think sometimes we can get so focused on the day-to-day that we forget to zoom out and think about the bigger picture. So what we're doing at Acsm and Orange Theory really wouldn't be possible without all of you being boots on the ground, making movement more accessible for everybody. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd love to take them now. I've also got my contact information on the screen and would love for you to save that should I be a resource for you in the future.
Awesome. That was such an awesome presentation, Rachel. I was super impressed in your candor about the profession, and this has been great. I'm super excited about it. And we have a couple questions for you. Actually, I will start being a little bit selfish here of a comment and a question for you, and then we'll kind of go from there if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things is just asking for feedback as a skill is so important in your career, regardless of where you are, like whether it's early career, mid-career, or late career. I think as you transition, I think it's being able to ask questions from folks either below, sideways, and above you. I think always asking for that feedback, no matter where it is, and asking very targeted questions is so important. And I think a lot of that is built on trust. And then I think a lot of it is being able to identify those individuals and who are your kind of career mentors. And I think that's such a great point that you made, and just wanted to say that as a comment. And thanks for bringing that up. I guess my question for you is that when I've talked to students, especially rising professionals at regional conferences, I think one of the big things is that they're really fearful about is the fear of failure or looking incompetent. How have you dealt with that personally? So I think that's one is as a rising professional ourselves, we're I think probably mid-career, but I think when you're really early on, like it's how do you deal with that feel of failure or just feeling like you're incompetent?
Oh man, well that reminds me of imposter syndrome, Francis, and I know I have felt that at different parts of my career. Even before I logged on today, I was thinking, I hope my message lands. I hope people who are listening find value in this, right? And so I think it sometimes has required me to take a step back and remember all of the preparation that I've done over time to get to where I am today. And I think so many of us need to do that sometimes. Again, we're in that go, go, go mentality where it's really helpful to take a step back, zoom out, and remember where we are. And then I think, sometimes failure is an important learning opportunity. That's how I try to think about it, right? You know me personally too, Francis, I like to do everything perfectly, right? So sometimes when I do fail, it's a wake-up call for me of a different way that I could approach something, or maybe an upskill opportunity that I wasn't aware of, that I can then, take as an action item and try to figure that out. I'll also share that as I was getting started and figuring out what I wanted to do with school, work, etc., I took what they call a gap year. I knew I needed more practical experience. I did not get into physical therapy school, which is what I wanted to do, right? I needed more practical experience, and that's the feedback I received from all those applications, and was able to kind of go back to the drawing board, figure out how I could get more practical experience, and that's what I did. I was a personal trainer. I made lots of connections, etc. So, oh, I love that. Your daughter wrote a sign in her room that said, "Fail first attempt in learning." Yes. Gosh, and sometimes that's hard to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess so the questions that are coming in is, what feedback have you gotten and how have you implemented it? So kind of talking about your request for feedback, and how have you, give us an example.
Okay, so I used to teach Pure Barre. Which is I think you could call it like a ballet inspired, really small range resistance training using body weight. It's choreographed to music. And that was one of the more challenging group exercise formats I had ever taught. It was also pre-programmed, pre-choreographed, which was a really different approach than what I had done before, which was program my own stuff and deliver it. And so a lot of the feedback that I've received as a coach or a group fitness professional, for example, was that I wasn't doing a good job flexing towards the people in the room. I had all this theory, but it was like really evident that the application piece was missing a little bit. I had a lot of knowledge. I could talk all about what's happening at the cellular level, what it's doing to your metabolism, what energy system they're using. But a lot of people that are showing up for the class, they didn't necessarily, not that they didn't care about that, but they cared about other things more. So I needed actually a lot of feedback and a lot of practice with how to craft the message and flex towards the people in front of me. So that has taken years, and I would say it's still an area of opportunity for me to flex to the people that show up.
Awesome. So I guess there's a lot of kind of questions on feedback. So I think that really resonated with folks. The next one is just like, how do you filter out the noise of feedback? And I think when I reflect on this question, it's social media is a great example of that, where everyone has an opinion. So how do you filter out noise from like genuine feedback?
Ooh. So yes, social media is a place where everyone has an opinion and where people feel really protected by their screen. I think that's something we've probably all experienced. I would say be purposeful in what feedback you're listening to, and try to get feedback from people who have jobs either that you want or respect, or people that are your peers, as you mentioned, or even people that maybe report to you. Getting feedback from people that know you in real life is something that it seems like duh, Rachel. But when we're inundated with all this virtual connection through social media, it can be hard to remember that. So I think too, there are a lot of people who aren't certified or who might self-proclaim that they know more about different areas of interest or expertise, especially with exercise. So remembering that you do have this base of knowledge that they may or may not have, and filtering through the feedback as best you can. Sometimes for me, when I get feedback that's hard to hear or that I'm not sure if I should pay attention to, I need to remove myself for a little while so I can think about it and process it, not necessarily in the moment. So maybe right now I receive feedback via email or social media or something like that. And it's like, oh, and it's a jolt. So I'm like, okay, I need to get up. I need to go for a walk. I need to decompress. Then I need to come back to it when I have a fresher mind. So that's also a practical thing that I've tried to do too.
Awesome. So continuing on the kind of the theme of feedback is, when you're asking for feedback, should professionals be looking for feedback from participants or clients or other professionals in the field? And how often do you recommend seeking that feedback?
So yeah, I think yes, we should be asking for feedback from clients and members. We also should be asking for feedback from other certified professionals. I think it's going to depend on where you are. That's such a scientist answer. It depends. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on where you are in your career too, right? Like when I was just starting to teach group exercise, I needed a lot more frequent feedback. Okay. And then when I took a break to have kids and came back in, I needed a lot of feedback. But as I was sort of like making good progress, the feedback could be less frequent. So I think definitely if you're a new professional, trying to stack the feedback to be more frequent is helpful, but only if you're doing a good job filtering the feedback and it's helpful to you, right? There's is sort of like, I think, a threshold of how much we can actually take and utilize and put forth. And so that's where having a mentor as a sounding board can be really helpful too.
Yeah. Then one more question, it looks like, is like, I think, can you give an example of referring out? And I think before you answer that, I think from like a personal thing is just like a lot of, I think, especially rising professionals or ones who are just kind of entering the field, just feel like they always have to have the answer. And so that actually kind of devalues trust. I think a lot of it is just understanding kind of within your network when you're sending people, developing relationships. And I think a lot of times when they're referring out, they're like, okay, well, I lost the client, they're never to come back. And frankly, it's actually builds up your client base the more you refer out, because then you get them right back to you once you're kind of working that kind of network. So what are your thoughts? And then if you give us an example of how you refer out and how that's been, whether it's been successful for you or it's been detrimental for you as a professional.
Yeah, I agree with you that referring out most of the time is going to enhance the trust that you have with that client. One that comes up a lot with exercise and exercise professionals is the nutrition angle, right? So like we have some knowledge and some ability to educate at a public health level about nutrition education, but we are not, registered dietitians. And so sometimes when a member is approaching, I've experienced this, I know, they'll start prodding and I'll be like, I'll have my sort of like answers in my mind of like, yeah, it is really important to make sure you're hydrating before exercise. And then they're like, well, how much? Well, with what? Well, what about this supplement, right? And they have all these questions that are really legitimate questions, but I know that, I can only go so far to give them helpful feedback. I think this goes back to the networking piece that we talked about just a little bit, having a network. So, I mean, if you're a fitness professional working in the industry, people are going to ask you questions about nutrition. Maybe your studio manager or your franchisee, et cetera, can help set up, a network so that you have a couple of registered dietitians in the area. So if someone does have like hypertension, which a lot of people do, and they're asking you about supplements, that's outside of your scope. Hey, we do have a great relationship with this registered dietitian who can actually understand a little bit more and help you in that area. That's just going to make the client trust you even more. They know then that you have their best interest at heart. And I can say too, from being in that situation, even with being in college for what feels like way too long, I still will find myself sometimes wanting to go down that slippery slope of answering the questions, because maybe I do know theoretically how much water. I know how the drug they're taking could interact with this supplement. Like I know that, but it's still not what my core competencies are, right? So it's like, I know that the intention is almost always great. You want to help. You want to make sure that that person maintains your trust. And sometimes the best way to do that is, handing them off. And like you said, then it becomes two ways, right? Like maybe that registered dietitian in your area has people who are asking exercise questions. Perfect, right? So it can go both ways. And I think you've just got to remember that.
Awesome. So there's two last questions. I'll take one of the questions and then I'll hand off the last one. I think is a perfect segue to kind of and wrap everything up. So Sandra had a question about mentorship and leadership programs through the Acsm. Absolutely, go to the Acsm website. There are mentorship and leadership boards that you can request there. You can always shoot me an email to fnerick@acsm.org, and I'll be able to kind of get you connected to our membership team as well. You can also send an email to certification@acsm.org and ask for that information as well. So the last question is thank you for the presentation, Rachel. I'm not familiar with Orange Theory. How do you choose that organization for yourself? What stands out as benefits to the organization provides, and as opposed to other organizations? So why should somebody want to work with OTF, and how can I find out more if I want to get employed there? If I could distill the question down.
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning more about career options at Orange Theory, go to the website. So it's www.orangetheory.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a careers tab, which is going to show you not only the options that are available at headquarters, which is where I work, but also all of the job openings that are available throughout our network. So there are likely studios in the city or town where you live. Maybe there's an opening there. As far as what drew me to industry work in general, I think I can comment on maybe better. I felt like I had all this knowledge from all this school and, I'm a classically trained academic, but I always, throughout that time, was coaching. I was teaching, and I saw this gap between the two worlds. And I knew that I wanted to be sort of one of the people that could help bridge that gap. And so Orange Theory to me offered this really unique opportunity to have access to, we have about 10,000 coaches in our network. So a really large group of certified professionals who are hungry for more science-backed information. I knew that we also collect a lot of data that from a research perspective is really attractive to me as well. How can we tell the story of how this type of exercise is improving different health outcomes? And we're starting to kind of be able to dive into that. And so I think for me, it's a good fit from an impact perspective. It was also a really good opportunity for me to get a lot of new information about the business world. Because again, I think I mentioned in the presentation, that was a big area of opportunity for me. I really needed to play catch up. And so I've learned a lot of that the hard way, or on the fast track, if you will. So for
I think, yeah, I agree. And Sachiko, if I think I'd recommend it, take an OTF class. I think I think culturally, when you go there, it's a lot of the folks say it's just like, it's the feel, it's the culture, it's the constant learning from that organization, the much investments they do, not only as as a person going through it. I think it's interesting and exciting to go through it, but then just the amount they invest into their professionals, I think, in their growth and opportunities there, I think are just wonderful. So I think we got to wrap it up there. Thank you all for joining. Any other questions, please send them over to Rachel. Her email's up here, or you can send it to me as well. Thank you again. And our next presentation is going to be, as Rachel so eloquently put, is on communication skills. And looking forward to kind of connecting with you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.